in the grand arena of political discourse, where ideological titans clash and rhetorical broadswords are wielded with fervor, one might find it peculiar, nay, outright fascinating, how the label of weird has emerged as a potent weapon in the arsenal of democratic messaging against the Republican phalanx.
Genuinely asking, what makes the "they're weird" tactic from Dems so effective where previous messaging has failed? I think the thing that makes the weird thing work is that, remember what I've said before, how when people insult you politically and they're very different from you, the insults usually don't matter that much, right? Like if a Republican calls you, you know, whatever slurs or words they call people on the left, like, well, who cares? I don't identify with you guys anyway. And then like if you're on the left, or if you're on the right and like a Democrat calls you like, oh, like you're, you know, you're a racist, you're or whatever. It's like, yeah, of course you guys think that. Who cares? But if you're being insulted by your own side, well, now it feels a lot different, right? Why are you calling me racist? I'm not racist. Why would you? Wait, we're way too closely politically aligned for you to say that, and I don't consider myself to be this thing at all. Whereas on the Republican side, I feel like the messaging has always been that the progressives especially are weird, right? The weird people, the weird furries, the weird, like all the weird people. And being called weird, I think when you perceive yourselves as being the not weird, the normal people, and the other side are all the weirdos, it probably hits a little bit like that. That'd be my guess. But it's also hard to predict why any particular messaging catches on or not. I don't know why you would get so triggered by this particular thing.
Destiny, that cybernetic oracle of debate, delves into this phenomenon with the precision of a philosopher dissecting the minutiae of a metaphysical conundrum. Why, in the pantheon of political invectives, has the term weird struck a chord so deep within the Republican psyche, causing reverberations that have, to say the least, unsettled their otherwise unflappable demeanor? To begin this exploration, one must first understand the nature of political insults and their efficacy, or lack thereof, depending on the source. Destiny astutely observes that insults flung from across the ideological divide often fail to land with the intended impact. When a Republican hurls a pejorative at a Democrat, or vice versa, it is akin to water off a duck's back. The insult lacks the sting, the visceral bite, because it emanates from a perceived other, an entity so fundamentally different in values and worldview that the words carry little weight. It is the political equivalent of a dog barking at the moon, loud, perhaps, but ultimately inconsequential. However, when the insult comes from within, from one's own political kin, the effect is markedly different. Herein lies the crux of Destiny's analysis. When a member of your own tribe, someone with whom you share a substantial portion of your political DNA, labels you with a term that carries negative connotations, the insult pierces through the armor of ideological solidarity. It forces a moment of introspection, a cognitive dissonance that is far more disquieting than any attack from the opposing camp. To be called racist or Nazi by someone within your own ideological sphere is to confront a challenge to your self-perception, to grapple with the uncomfortable possibility that you may not be as aligned with your comrades as you thought. Now, consider the Republican self-image, a bastion of normalcy, a stronghold of traditional values, the guardians of what they perceive as the moral and cultural bedrock of society. In this self-narrative, they stand in stark contrast to the progressive left, whom they often caricature as the epitome of weirdness, the bizarre, the abnormal, the fringe elements of society that threaten to upend the natural order. The Democrats, in Republican eyes, are the purveyors of strange ideologies and behaviors that defy conventional norms. Yet, the tables have turned in recent discourse. The Democrats, with a subtlety that belies the potency of their strategy, have begun to deploy the label of weird against the Republicans themselves. This, Destiny posits, is where the sting lies. For a group that prides itself on being the paragons of normalcy, to be branded as weird is an affront to their very identity. It is not merely an insult, it is a challenge to the core of their self-perception. The label of weird hits where it hurts because it upends the established narrative, suggesting that the Republicans, too, have strayed into the territory of the bizarre and the abnormal. Destiny's insight into this phenomenon is particularly illuminating when one considers the historical context. For years, Republicans have positioned themselves as the bulwark against the perceived encroachments of progressivism, which they have often portrayed as an aberration, a deviation from the normal course of society. The accusation of weirdness was a weapon they wielded with confidence, secure in the belief that they alone held the mantle of normalcy. But now, as this weapon is turned against them, the Republicans find themselves in an unaccustomed position, on the defensive, struggling to reconcile this new, disconcerting image with their long-held self-conception. This inversion of the rhetorical battlefield is, as Destiny suggests, deeply unsettling for the Republican psyche. It forces a reckoning, a re-evaluation of their place in the cultural landscape. Are they, too, susceptible to the weirdness they so readily ascribe to others? Have they, in their zeal to combat the left, adopted positions and behaviors that now render them vulnerable to the very label they once used as a bludgeon? These are questions that gnaw at the edges of their ideological fortress, undermining the certainties that once seemed unassailable. Furthermore, Destiny's analysis highlights a broader truth about political messaging. Its effectiveness often lies not in the objective validity of the insult, but in its ability to exploit vulnerabilities in the opponent's self-image. The Democrats' weird campaign succeeds not because it is objectively true, but because it taps into a latent anxiety within the Republican consciousness, an anxiety that their claim to normalcy may be slipping away, that they may no longer be the defenders of the cultural status quo, but rather have become a part of the cultural fringe themselves. The Democrats' deployment of weird as a political cudgel is a masterstroke of rhetorical strategy, one that has managed to unsettle the Republican establishment in ways that previous messaging has failed to do. By turning the tables and challenging the Republicans' self-perception, the Democrats have forced their opponents into a defensive posture, one where they must grapple with the uncomfortable possibility that they, too, might be the weird ones. Destiny's analysis sheds light on the psychological underpinnings of this phenomenon, offering a nuanced understanding of why this particular insult has resonated so deeply within the Republican psyche. As the political landscape continues to evolve, it remains to be seen whether the Republicans can reclaim their narrative of normalcy, or whether the label of weird will continue to haunt them in the battles to come.